I feel like a lot of people are going to be livid by the title of this video, but hang on, listen to what I have to say, and you might agree, you might disagree. So one of the newest elements of film and television today is that Hollywood is really implementing representation. We have seen a lot of recent television shows and films come out that have been centered around representing a certain minority group. For example, you have the Black Panther, Crazy Rich Asians, Never Have I Ever, and there are so many more that I could list. And this has been very pivotal to changing Hollywood's very rigid form of storytelling, where stories were always centered around white main characters with, if even, a side character who was the only diverse character in the film or in the show. So of course, it's been amazing to see so many more diverse actors on the screen with diverse characters on the screen. But with that, I've come to notice that a lot of new films and television shows really emphasize that they nail representation, only to then further perpetrate stereotypes, tell the same stories over and over again, or use their racially diverse characters as a marketing point. And that's something that has not been sitting right with me. I was actually inspired to make this video after watching a movie recently, and that movie is titled American Fiction, and it was actually up for Best Picture at this year's Academy Awards, and it did win an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, I believe. I won't give away spoilers, but I do highly recommend that you go and watch the film before you watch this video. But American Fiction is about this writer, his name is Monk, and he writes a book that isn't doing so well in terms of sales, and he becomes very frustrated with the fact that his book is constantly under the African American Studies section of bookstores, because he feels as though his book has nothing to do with African American studies and that he's being put into a box just because he's a Black author. But at the same time, publishing agencies won't pick up his book because they want new voices from Black authors. And even though he is a Black author, his stories are not the kinds of stories that they want to tell. And so as a way to jab at the industry, he ends up writing a book that's very much a parody. He writes a book that perpetrates stereotypes. It's very common storylines that we've seen, things we've already read before, and he puts a book out there, and it even has a very brazen title to it. And lo and behold, that book actually picks up and goes viral. It's the only book that he's written that has actually gained traction, gained a lot of recognition, earned him a lot of money, and also is going up for a lot of awards. And so one of the themes in the film is about representation and telling stories about diverse people and how we tend to do that, and whether or not we do it in a way that's actually authentic and genuine, or if we're doing it so that we can feed the interest of, in all honesty, a white audience who just wants to read and benefit off of the trauma and hardships of people of color. And I found this to be really, really interesting, because a lot of what Monk's character is feeling throughout the film are things that I have felt myself as of recently. Of course, I've loved seeing more South Asian people on the big screen and stories being told about us, but there's a big difference between representing a group of people simply because you're telling a story about them versus representing a group of people because you're trying to make money. There are common narratives that every ethnic group has, and a lot of these narratives are the only narratives that we're hearing about these groups of people. How many South Asian characters can you think of who were often nerdy, socially awkward, and romantically undesirable? I can name a few. And so when Mindy Kaling made Never Have I Ever, and it was about this South Asian girl who was nerdy, socially awkward, and very abnormally obsessed with losing her virginity, I personally was very disappointed. And I've actually already made a video about this series on my channel, and a lot of people agreed with me. But those of y'all who disagreed with me, damn, I got a lot of angry comments under that video. People telling me I should have never shared my opinion in the first place. I'm like, guys, that's what I do on this channel. But anyways, that show really upset me simply because it was sold to us as a show that was going to represent a South Asian girl. It was something that we hadn't seen before, and we were finally going to get what we all needed in our childhood. And then the show comes out, and it doesn't hit. The writing was weak. The character was, again, an embodiment of a lot of stereotypes that we've seen before, and not just Davy herself, but even her mother was a lot of stereotypes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we should eradicate brown people who do identify with these labels, someone who is nerdy, someone who's socially awkward. I mean, these people exist in real life, right? And that's totally fine. We have already seen so many shows that used a South Asian character that was nerdy and socially awkward as the butt of the joke. Why couldn't we then see a character who was a little more developed, that could be socially awkward, could be super nerdy, very into STEM, but had a lot more layers to her character? You know what I'm saying? I feel like Never Have I Ever for me was very flat, and it just was a representation of all the stereotypes that we've already seen in the past. In addition to that, Mindy Kaling was, I believe, the producer or the writer of the latest Scooby-Doo adaptation. And one of the biggest marketing points that they used was that the characters were racially diverse, that Scooby doesn't look the way we remember him to be, that even her character Velma is going to be played by a South Asian, well, it's voiced by a South Asian woman, and in the show it will be a South Asian woman who plays the character. And then the show was just so weak in terms of writing, and it perpetrated so many racially motivated stereotypes, a lot of racial connotations to everything that was being said. And so it made me ask the question of what was the point of marketing the show as a racially diverse show if it was going to end up just being so A, bad in terms of writing, and B, perpetrate so many stereotypes. I mean, what are we trying to tell people here? So quickly going back to the movie American Fiction, Monk is frustrated because there's an author who blew up, whose book was doing really, really well, a lot better than any of his books. And she had written a book that he felt like was exactly what people wanted to see Black people as, and that he believed that Black people had so much more potential, but that this potential was not being seen because we're seeing the same narrative over and over again. With Mindy Kaling, it was almost like she was making a show that was supposed to be sold and marketed to brown women so that we would want to watch it, but really it was to entertain a white audience. I really enjoyed Miss Marvel because Miss Marvel is a show about a Pakistani superhero, and her Pakistaniness is never kept a secret. I mean, we see it all throughout the show. Her parents are strict, like many South Asian parents. They're very worried about her. Whenever she goes out, she's got a curfew. Her parents misunderstand her at a lot of different points. We don't see her parents as the antagonist of the show. We don't see her as the people getting in the way of what Kamala is trying to achieve, but rather we're giving a full story. We're giving nuances and background into who her parents are and why they are the way that they are, which for me was very touching, because for any of us as South Asian kids growing up who had strict parents and who had the same upbringing as Kamala did in the show, it gave light to what our parents have been through and why they are the way that they are. And it really did humanize them as well, because when we constantly perpetuate the same narrative over and over again, it's very tiring, it's very exhausting, and it gets really sickening. You know, I want to be able to see South Asian characters on the screen who are going through so many different things, and them being South Asian is just part of the story. I also made a short film recently that is right now in its post-production process, and it's about a Bengali girl who is in a misunderstanding with her immigrant mother. Well, I have taken this opportunity to make a film to tell a story about a Bengali family. I wouldn't even say that this story is so important because it represents my people, as in it represents us, but because it's telling a story that so many of us can relate to. So many of us have been through something similar, and it can help us feel seen a little bit. And not just the Bengali community, but other first-generation Canadians or Americans who grew up having parents who had immigrated to the country. I mean, the story is relatable to multiple people. But yes, I am very proud of the fact that my film centers around a Bengali family, so that specifically my Bengali audience can feel seen. And that's what representation means to me. I think representation should be this normal thing where we're telling a variety of stories with nuances and layers to it. And yes, of course, we can touch into the racial background of the character and how that affects their experience, but we don't have to sell it as a marketing point. And we don't have to necessarily praise a film or a show that comes out simply because it's representation. We can actually celebrate the film or the show because it tells a beautiful story, and it does a very good job of that. A film that centered around an Indian family that I think was absolutely beautiful, both in capturing the South Asian experience that a lot of us can relate to, but also just having a really good story at hand, is Mira Nair's The Namesake. It's a beautiful story about an Indian Bengali family, and it follows a newly married couple as they get married and have a family, and then the narrative switches to their kids who are growing up in America and having a little bit of an identity crisis with trying to adapt to the American society, trying to fit into the American society while also being Bengali people. Another film that did such a beautiful job of capturing the experience of Chinese women is The Joy Luck Club, which is based on a book, and this film follows 4 different daughters and their mothers and their stories and how their stories intersect, representing Chinese culture, Chinese values, but also the nuances to that experience of being a family that's immigrated to America and having children who aren't growing up in the same environment as you. I actually made a video about the Joy Luck Club on my channel you can watch as well. As a last example, I want to talk about The Little Mermaid. A lot of people were upset about the fact that Halle Bailey was playing The Little Mermaid, and a lot of other people were also really happy to see a Black woman play this character. And I will say that I did watch The Little Mermaid and I really enjoyed the movie. But this might be a hot take. For me, when I was watching the movie, I didn't feel like I was watching The Little Mermaid. I felt like I was watching a movie that was inspired by The Little Mermaid, but was a different take on that story. For me, when I think of The Little Mermaid, I still always think of Ariel. And Ariel was already created long ago. She was already a well-established character since before this new adaptation was made. And what does she look like? We can make more stories. We can make another princess, a mermaid princess that is racially diverse. We don't necessarily need to change a story that already existed and make that character a person of color if they've already been visually created as otherwise. We can easily make a new story. We can easily write new characters that are racially diverse and that have their own experiences that are different from those characters that have already been written out. As an industry, we need to open doors and continue to give opportunities to racially diverse filmmakers and filmmakers who have so many different stories to tell and push these stories that have never been told before. All of that being said, I hope my thoughts have made sense. Whether you agree or disagree with me, I really look forward to a future where people of color being a part of film and television is a regular appearance and that we're not so shocked to see them on the screens anymore. I'm really excited to see more films being made centered around people of color with different narratives. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to say Ramadan Mubarak to all of my Muslim viewers that are watching. We're coming very close to the end of this very holy month, so I hope it's been going well for all of you. Make sure to leave a comment down below telling me what your thoughts are, whether you agree or disagree, but keep it respectful because some of y'all went real hard in the comment section of my Never Have I Ever video. If you have not subscribed already, what are you doing, bruv? Get to it, and I will see you guys in my next video.